What's going on, Junior's Fishing Company? Today I'm going to do a spinnerbait. I'm going to do some deer hair, and I haven't used saddle hackle yet, so I'm going to use saddle hackle for this tail. Now tying with a spinnerbait is pretty frustrating, obviously, because you have to wrap around this. So I'm not going to do like a dubbing loop. I've done some spinnerbait dubbing loops and stuff like that, but the one thing I try to do when I'm tying on a spinnerbait is I won't go to the hook point, just because trying to wrap through here and watching out for the hook and doing all that stuff can get kind of annoying. And really, these hooks are so long that I've got plenty of room to tie what I want to tie. I'm going to end up putting 4 little stacks, 3 really. I'm going to put a little base layer of gray down. This spinnerbait it's nothing special. I think I got it at like a bait shop by my cabin or something. It's just black, white with a little bit of red. So I'm going to kind of do a little crappie pattern, some silver, black, and white. And before I put down my saddle, I'm going to put down a little bit of deer hair to get a little base, but I don't want this to be too long. This bait's going to end up running between 5 and 6, maybe a little closer to 6, which is probably about right here. So that deer hair, I don't want it to go too far down. I'm using just 210 UTC black. I'm just going to get my base of deer hair down. Again, this just helps keep these thin saddles where you want them to be and not too far wrapped. And I've got some black and white saddle that I'll show you. One of them is, I can't remember if it's Kiog. It's from Fly Fish Food. This is like a white dyed over black. It's a full, I think it was like it was like 40 bucks. It wasn't too bad. I've really enjoyed using this. And then I've got actually pro grade whiting. This is like a cream. It's not fully white, but this is the best I can do. These are super thin, and when I cut with those, I'll actually save, like I cut this one, I'm going to save every one I've cut. There's a couple really long ones in here, because I can tie some dry flies with that. If you have a whiting, you know it comes with a billion feathers on it, so you really don't have to save a ton, but I like to anyway. So I'm going to put down my longest saddles first, and then as I wrap, I'm going to get shorter and shorter and shorter. I've kind of just blended a couple of these together. All these little stacks I'm going to put on are already blended. And I'm not worried about putting, you know, if you look at these feathers closely, you'll see that they're kind of cupped. I'm not really worried about putting cup down or anything like that, because this spinnerbait's going to move pretty quick in the water anyway. So I'm just going to put down, these aren't really I'm going to put these down a few at a time. I'll probably end up using a dozen or so of these Hackle saddles. And I'm just going to avoid putting them on the underside here just because they'll end up just getting so wrapped up in your hook anyway, so better to just not put them in. And I really like how these kind of dance in the water because they're so thin. And I'll end up putting some super glue down because I'll have a big bundle. They're pretty thick. And I thought about putting, I don't really have any gray little saddle like this. And gray and white are so hard. This is like a lighter gray, so it's kind of hard to tell the difference, especially when it's in the water. So you can see these are kind of tapered out. And then maybe I'll just put down a couple more. Maybe right on the bottom of the bait. I'm not going to put my flash in yet, but I'll have plenty of room to put down some bucktail, because these hook shanks on some of these spinnerbaits are so long that you've got plenty of room to work with. So I'm going to put down some glue. Just get it all in there. Then I'll let that glue dry, get my thread base kind of down. It'll be nice because I'm going to do a stack of deer hair here and then tinsel, and then I can come up on this where the skirt would be, and I'll be able to put 2 stacks right here. It's not going to be super thick because this spinnerbait isn't super heavy. This is probably a 1/4 ounce, and the more deer hair you add, the more wind resistance you're going to have, and you're not fly casting, you're just whipping this with a spinning rod or a bait caster, so you just want to be a little bit careful. So I'm going to let this glue dry a little bit more. Now I can take my first stack of deer hair, kind of get it stacked up. And this first one's going to be pretty long. Not super long. I want those tails to be able to, should be good. It can be a little tricky maneuvering around these, and I could have taken some extra time to move that, but I really didn't feel like it. But yeah, tying on a spinnerbait can be kind of annoying. And I'm not worried about how much hair I have up here. You know, typically on a fly you'd want that thread right on the edge of that deer hair, but I have so much room to work with, and I'm not going to be worried about an eye getting crowded or anything like that, so I just want to make sure I work this all the way around. See if I can get a little bit of flare out of there. But you're burning this bait pretty good anyway, so the flare doesn't come as much into play as it normally would. You just don't want to go too thick. And when I get this secured down, this is where I'm going to put my tinsel. And I for sure could add another thing of hair here. I just don't want to overdo it. It's really easy to put too much on, and then it just kind of drags through the water. If you put too much hair on, it's kind of just lumpy. So I've got Holographic Flashabou. This is already blended. I didn't blend it. This is Moon. I'm going to taper this out. Just kind of roll it out of my fingers. Get it unstuck. And this is a good clump of tinsel. I'm going to take a couple of those longer ones out. And I'm going to tie this right on the bottom. Get it rotated right on the bottom. Spread it around. Get good thread pressure so I can kind of comb these out. Loosen up a little bit so I can spread them. And then I'll come to my side, grab a couple more, work it right onto the side. And these are the ones I'm going to have to trim by hand. Then I can come, get a good wrap there, and I'm going to come. So I'm going to put some super glue on all this. Then I'm going to come up with my thread. And this is where it gets really frustrating, or fun, however you want to look at it. Because the closer you get to this head, the more you're going to have to go around with your thread. So I've got 2 stacks, just gray, white, and black blended together. It looks more white, but when I'm looking at this, I see more black. The darker colors are always going to stand out. So if you make like a white and chartreuse bait, you want a lot more white than chartreuse. If you make a black and a white, you'll want more white in your jig or whatever than the lighter color, because it's just going to stand out more. And to me, all of the things I tie typically end up looking a lot darker in the water, just from my experience. So I'm going to trim this up. And this is a pretty decent clump. These up here are going to be higher up. So I think this little lead bump is going to kind of help add some more flare. I'm going to get it down pretty far. And that glue's not dry yet, but I'm not wrapping on it or anything, so I shouldn't have to worry too much. And I put so much deer hair on here, I can kind of feel it spinning. That's when you know you've put a little too much on, but that's alright because a couple thicker stacks, but there's less stacks. I could have easily put more hair down, but I didn't on purpose because I wanted the front of this bait to be a little more bulky than the back. And it's going to swim like this, so I want to make sure that the top of this bait is where, at least, if you're going to get it evenly distributed in one spot, you want it to be on the top, in my opinion. Get it all the way around. I'm going to hold down here. Get it nice and tight on there. And I'm just going to lock those down. And again, I could probably fit 3 or more hair stacks here, but I don't want to because I'm intentionally making these stacks like twice of what I normally would. Now it really doesn't matter, it's the same amount of hair, but it's just how I kind of thought up. That was my game plan going in, so sticking to it. You can kind of see through, which is a good sign because you don't want it just crazy thick on you. So this last one, is where I'm gonna, if you've seen any of the other videos, I'm gonna use that razor blade right on this head. So I'm gonna have some extra hair up here to cut off. And you might not be able to tell, but there's some decent flare from these hairs I already put down. The only thing I want to make sure is that these aren't too long. So I've got some extra hair right up there. It's tough when you have all of this thread out when you're doing your wraps. Tighten up my thread. It just gets in the way. Everything gets in the way. 1, 2, and I'm going to pull down towards the opposite way. Get all of these bad boys around. Then when I get them where I want, that's when I can ream down. Either side of the hook. And I haven't done any reverse tying. I do occasionally, but if you have a push tool, good luck, right? And if you're not super confident in your ability to just do it with your hand, it just does not turn out how you want it. And I've got a couple little techniques I do that maybe I'll tie a musky jig coming up here, and I can kind of show you what I've learned in all my trials and tribulations. Hold these down. Now I'm going to get a couple good wraps. Hold down these, another tight wrap, really tight. Lock those hairs down, because even when you cut with a sharp razor, they push a little bit. You don't want to push anything out. But I want a 360 pressure on these. So when I let go, it loosens, so I want to make sure I'm pulling all around. That should be good. I'm going to come up here, and now I'm going to trim. Where is it? With my razor blade. It's nice and easy when you've got this black thread, because I can go right onto it and trim. Don't push too hard, you don't want to chip your paint, and don't go too low where you're going to get your thread. Alright, so now the toughest part about one of them, I mean, it's not super hard, but one of the tougher parts of this is trying to whip finish around this. To me, isn't worth it. I'll either just do like a half hitch and then glue, or I'll put some glue on my thread and just wrap that. I prefer to do a half hitch, which you need quite a bit of thread, and you know, you just work your way around your bait. It's not like, you know, some fantastically difficult thing to do, but it's really just, if you're whip finishing and you hit, if you hit something and it frays your line, and then you're trying to go back, and then you're trying to do all this stuff, it really isn't worth it, in my opinion, to spend all that time doing all that. So I'm just gonna do head cement to finish this off, and there's painted eyes on here. On a lot of the spinner baits I'll usually, if there aren't stick-on eyes already on there, I'll usually put some on there, just because these painted eyes, just to me, I mean, they're fine, but a crappie pattern, deer hair, saddle, spinnerbait with some holographic flashabou. Give us a follow at Juniors Fishing Company on Instagram, juniorsfishing.com. Appreciate all the support so far. Like and comment, and whether you love it, you hate it, you want to see something, drop it below, and we'll see you on the next one.